Women, a podcast that provides a platform for women of all walks of life to share their upbringings, life lessons learned, experiences, and journeys to come. Uncommon Women speaks on topics that can relate to all women. We share, we listen, we laugh, we cry, and we empower each other to be the best uncommon woman that they can be. Ultimately, we are cultivating a global movement of women supporting women. Women supporting entrepreneurship, relationships, self-love, and so much more. We inspire each other to make an impact on this world for the better. Be sure to like, share, and subscribe to Uncommon Women. Now, finally, grab a seat, get comfortable, and hear from your wonderful hosts, Shanira and Jenny Lee. Hi, kings and queens. Thank you for tuning in to Uncommon Women. I'm Shanira.
And I'm Jenny Lee.
And today we have an amazing inspiration for young women. Lauren Goods, which is a model, a posing coach, and she holds degrees in social work and neuroscience. She's going to join us today to share her testimony of some childhood trauma that has transformed her into her greatness. And we are so honored to actually have her today on our platform to just share her testimony in regards to what she's been through in life and what she's doing now for the community. So thank you, Lauren, so much for coming on today's episode. And before we get into the good stuff of your testimony, is there anything that you would like to tell us about yourself?
Like you said, I have a bachelor's in neuroscience from Xavier, my master's of social work from Tulane. I'm currently a mental health counselor at a non-traditional high school, and I actually do PRN as well at a behavioral health hospital working with adolescents. And if I'm not doing social work, I am modeling as well as pose coaching, and I also own an Airbnb in Atlanta. So wherever I feel like need to be, I try to be at that time.
Amazing. So you're a young entrepreneur doing your thing, I see. What do you like most about modeling?
The creativity of it, like doing it and then seeing the pictures just always amazes me. But the creativity of it, and it's just something that I'm very confident in, and it flows. Everyone has like their hobby of singing or dancing, and modeling is just something that transpired in me. And a little bit of my childhood actually spiked that interest. So I'll share a little bit of that as well as we go throughout the interview.
All right, perfect. So let's get into that. How was your life growing up?
That's a great
25 now, right?
25, yes. So I just turned 25 in March. It doesn't feel like it. It feels weird to say like I'm 25. I would never feel like I would get this point. Growing up, it was all over the place. I would say I grew up with my mom and my three sisters. Well, two sisters. I have one sister on my dad's side, and then I have two sisters, two twin sisters, and an older brother. My older brother, we are 10 years apart, and then my two younger sisters are like a year younger than me. And I didn't really grow up with my dad. I did grow up with my stepdad, but I never claimed him as my dad. I did not like the man. He never did anything to me. I just couldn't get jiggy with it. And so we moved around a lot. Originally a lot of my family is from Chicago, and I spent a lot of summers in Chicago. But I lived in Kansas City. I lived in Indiana. I've lived in a lot of places in Missouri, St. Joseph, Missouri. I lived in Des Moines, Iowa. Like every time something seemed to go wrong, my mom's avenue was like, all right, we got to get up and leave. And so that was always the solution to everything, was like start brand new. So we moved around a lot. But growing up, like I said, it was my mom and my three sisters. My brother was raised by my grandparents. So I didn't really have a strong relationship with him until he was about 19. So I was probably about 9. Then he started to come live with us. And that's when like our relationship started to get stronger. And then life just kind of went from moving around. It was like regardless of what challenges we endured, Regards to dysfunctionality, my mother is a functioning crack addict, and my dad was a heroin addict. And I didn't find out these things until I got older, till about like 9 or 10.
Mm.
Like growing up now, like I was preparing for this and I was like reflecting on my childhood to see, because there's a lot I could talk about. And like growing up, it was crazy because it's like I used to walk into a room, like my mom would be in her room or whatever, and she would come out and it would be like really smoky. But I'm like, why is it so smoky? And then like she smoked cigarettes. But like as like now looking back, putting the pieces together, she was in there smoking crack, and like she would open up the door and like hella smoke would just come out. And I was like, and so when I first found out that my mom was on crack, was my brother. My brother kind of put the pieces together when he moved down there, because like I said, I never knew. Like people would come in and out of the house and stuff like that, and they would like give me money to go to the store, whatever. I'm just like, okay, you got money type thing, but like they're doughboys whole time.
Oh, yeah.
It just was I get to go to the store kind of thing. But when my brother put it to pieces together, at the time it still didn't make sense because I'm like 9 years old. But at the time it was really like, wow, my mom is on drugs and I never knew. And because like I said, she was functioning, like she didn't look like a crack addict. I remember the first time that we went to in foster care, and we was at church and they were showing us people on drugs. And I'm like, my mom don't look like that, so she don't qualify as that, whatever the case may be. But her actions did, like in the behaviors of everyone has their addictive behaviors. And so her actions did show that. And I remember we was like laying down and I asked my mom for the first time, I was like, Mom, why do you do drugs? And she said, she was saying, sometimes I just feel alone. And then, as a child, I think I was probably like seventh or eighth grade, and I heard something like, you got 3 kids, how you alone? And so it didn't process that, like, why she did drugs, and like seeing the aftermath of all the actions of her drug addict behavior led to all the dysfunctionality within our family system. It just didn't make sense. And so that, amongst a lot of things, put a strain on our relationship. But it also made me like separate from my family when I could. And so like I said, growing up, like, to this, and I remember all the bad stuff. Like I remember I was in a drug bus one time, and I don't know how old I was. Had to be like 5 or 6. But my mom, when she did go to jail, that was the first time we went to foster care. I don't remember like the whole sequence of how I got into foster care. I just know my mom had went to jail for writing bad checks, and she left us with her boyfriend at the time. And her boyfriend, world at the time, he did molest me while she was in jail. I
Wow.
don't exactly remember where my 2 sisters were at the time. Like I said, I was probably 5 or 6. I don't know if they were with their dad or who they were with, but I was with him, and his dad sold drugs, like a heavy drug dealer.
Okay.
And so my mom would like we were all in like this big house. I remember this young lady, her name was like Laura, I believe, and she had cancer, and it was like a crack house, and we were all in the house. And next thing I know, like feds just busting, like they have those things, you busting the door, everybody get down, and like
Wow.
remember screaming because it was like, wow, there's so many people. But at the time I didn't realize why they were doing what they were doing. It was just the feds is here and them telling everybody get down. And it's crazy because I was like 5, but I remember everything vividly. I remember them coming in, I remember
Mm.
having us get down on the ground, I remember me crying, I remember my mom crying. And it was just like such a traumatic event. Like I said, as I got
Yeah.
older, a lot of pieces started to like come together, like how things came about. And so we was around it, around a lot of drug activity, and I don't remember exactly when my mom got out of jail, how long I was with who I was with during the molestation time. But I do remember that once my mom got out, we were at our house and we were in the tub, and I told her what happened, and she believed me. And I don't know exactly how DCFS got involved or who called DCFS, but DCFS was at the door the next day. And my mom got scared, so she packed us all up. Like I said, packed us all up. We got to go now. So we were on the way to leave from Kansas City, and she got pulled over. And she had a warrant out for her arrest. And
Wow.
our first interaction with foster care. And my mom went to rehab, and I remember to this day, like going to visit her while she's at rehab and being in foster care. And they split me and my sisters up. So my two sisters went with one family, and I went with another family. And at the time during foster, it was weird. One, because it was with white people, so it was like, I don't know, you guys. I don't know. It was a lot of random kids, and it was like they were doing weird stuff to my hair. It just was really weird. And so, but I liked being exposed to different things. So like I learned new foods that I never knew that I liked, or what kind of new foods. I got to do stuff that I never got to do before. So that was probably the only benefit from being in foster care, was like the different exposure. But I didn't like that me and my sisters were separated. And I would say we were probably then about a year or so, not too long. And then we got out, and that's when we moved to St. Joseph, Missouri. And St. Joseph was it was I would say a roller coaster, I should say.
Yeah.
Went from staying in shelters like the Salvation Army, and like just being bored. So we would stay at the library, because who wants to be in a shelter with old people all day? So like we would go
Yeah.
to the library, we would go to
Mhm.
the Y. We would just try to like be outside as much as possible. But the crazy thing is though, like now that I'm saying it, like growing up, no one ever knew that I stayed in shelters or like stayed in motels. If I stayed in a motel and there was like an apartment complex down the street, I would tell my friends to come pick me up from the apartment complex.
Oh, okay.
Like, no one ever knew that like I stayed in motels or anything like that. And so once we had moved to St. Joe, it was just like it was a roller coaster. My mom got cancer. Uh, the
Wow.
severity of it, I don't know, to be honest. Because the first time she found out that she could put us in a group home because of health conditions or whatever the case may be. I don't feel like it was a health condition type of thing. I think that was what she told herself, but I feel like it was like a get out of jail free card. Like I could drop
Mhm.
off my kids and somebody will take
Okay.
care of them. So that was like the first time going to like a group home. But we've been
Right.
in that group home, I think at least twice, maybe three times, but at least twice. And she put us there. She put us in the group home
Okay.
to take care of her needs. And like I said, do I believe it? No. But if that's what she says, not what she says. Um, and it was just like because of the dysfunctionality of the addiction, it was a lot of just chaos in the sense of like drug activity, shootings, and like violence. Like her and my stepdad would fight over money and crack all the time. Like so it would cause us to, if we were like staying in a motel or something and he did something to like get us put out, now we gotta move again. So it was just like here, 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 everywhere. But
That's
despite all of that, like now that I tell it, it's crazy thinking it, but then it was normal. Like it was just like, this is my life. This is what it's
yeah.
going to be like. And, you know, kind of make the best of it. And it's crazy that like growing up, I didn't have major behavioral problems because of the chaos. It was just like, this is what it is.
Yeah.
And yeah.
Wow. Wow. That's such a brave story for you to be able to just be transparent and go through everything that you've been through, and to see you now, you're just blossoming. Bouncing from group homes and foster care, how was your relationship like trying to build friendships and go to school? Like how did things work in regards to that?
So, like friends, one thing I could say about my mom is she made sure we got a good education. If we stayed in the hood, we was taking the bus to the suburbs to go to school. Or even if like we may have stayed in like a nice townhouse, but nothing was in there, but just to be able to like go to certain schools, she really did try to make us be in good environments despite everything else. And so growing up, it was like building friends. Um it was I like I said, I guess I have a very friendly personality. I'm very nice and kind. So making friends was easy. And keeping those friendships was going well too. And like I said, and no one ever knew like what our environment was like. But they were always nice. So like I always try to play sports and make to be able to like just stay busy. And I would have, I never had rides to the games or to practice, anything like that. But the coach would always look out, and teammates would always look out. And there was times where like we stayed in a motel that was like 30 minutes away from my school, and it was at the end of the school year. So I had a friend that allowed me to stay with them like the last week of school so I could get to school. So like I would say I was always blessed with people that supported, not knowing what may have been going on, like the full story. But like now, like that I see people that have like people that are friends like 10 years. I'm like, I don't have friends that are like 10 plus years or like childhood friends type of thing. Cause it was we would always move around. So like I know a lot of people because of that, and I keep in touch with a lot of people. But it's not like a very solid friendship. And I would never like invite people over because there was nowhere to come
Circumstances,
to.
right?
But I stayed with people that had like money. So like I was at their like gated communities and their golf carts and invited to all the parties. And so but the relationship itself wasn't like it wasn't strong. And I even made out the group home. Like if you got to a certain level, you can invite people to come stay in the group home. And at the time, I think I told somebody that, and they were like, "Yeah, I want to come," but I'm like, "Wait, like, why would
Why would you think that?
like they were really excited, but I think I had gotten to a fight, and so I wasn't able to allow people to come stay the night. But there were a few people that because actually the middle school I went to was right across from the group home, so I really couldn't hide that I stayed in the group home because I walked across the street. And so like people was very like intrigued by the fact that I was in a group home and I'm in the group home. Like I don't want to be here. But I guess like it just seemed fun to them. But some of them like the group home was kind of like it was a big house, and we did get to do a lot of activities and like video games and stuff like that. But like the sense of like just being there and not in a family unit was challenging. But friends, it was, shout out to the friends that really supported me and never judged. Like looking back, I did have like some really solid friends, and I really appreciate them. I'm trying not to cry, because they never judged, and they always supported what I wanted to do until this day. And it's cool that they get to see where I started and where I am now. Because that's a true blessing. Because some of them have been there like since day one, from like 8th grade.
Wow.
And know a lot of things that I've been through. So the ones that do know and the ones that were there and still there, shout out to them.
You had a covering over your life, which is amazing, despite everything that you've been through. How's your relationship with your siblings?
So I would say my sophomore year, my niece got taken away, my first niece, so her sister, and that situation kind of like changed my whole family dynamic in my life like forever. And I remember getting the phone. Well, my niece was like, she was like the first baby of the family, I guess. She was like the foundation to it. And so my brother was locked up at the time, and my my we had my niece at the time, and they took her because they were doing, well, my long story short, my sister made up a lie about an incident, and they got DCFS involved. And so when DCFS got involved, they started asking questions, snooping around, and they did drug tests on everybody. And some people came up positive for crack cocaine. And so when that happened, they took my niece, and they took her. She was at school, and she was 3 or 4 at the time. And they took her, and they said, well, grandma's sick, so you have to come with us. And so they didn't give us a chance to say goodbye. They just took her. And so I was at work. I worked at JCPenney, and I got the phone call from my mom that they took her. And like that shattered a lot. It really hard. And so when she got taken away, at the time I was about 15, probably about to turn 16. And so my 2 sisters went to the system, and I was so grateful. I had a mentor who I went with. And so I stayed with my mentor at the time. And so when that happened, my brother was locked up. And when he got out, I kind of like tried to help him get back on his feet. And he went back to Chicago. My mom was in Minnesota somewhere. I don't know. She was in Minnesota, supposedly in rehab. And and ever since then, like me and my sister's relationship just kind of went down keel. We did visits, but it just wasn't like the same. And my brother, me and him got closer because we only had freedom. Like with my sisters, they restricted communication. Like they were saying that I couldn't talk to them, or they had to get approval from their therapist. And they tried to restrict my communication with my brother. And I was like, you can't tell me who I can and can't talk to. And so they were trying to really restriction of communication with all of us for whatever reason. To this day, I do not know. So because of that incident, like everybody just went their own way. And my brother went his way, I went my way, my 2 sisters went their way, and it just was never the same. And to this day, my one sister that started everything, I'm not gonna lie, I haven't forgiven her from it, because of just how everything shattered after the incident. So I don't really talk to her. I have her on social media. My other sister, she stays in Houston. We don't have like a really strong relationship, but I don't have any animosity or anything towards her. It was just kind of like we check in here and there. Me and my brother were recently close, up until about a year. We haven't talked in a year due to a recent incident. And so it's just like those relationships aren't as solid as they used to be. Even like growing up, we weren't as close, but it was still like a family dynamic.
Yeah.
And we always like had each other because like we was in one motel room. It was 5 of us, so like we got very creative in the things that we did. But it just like it's not something that we force. It's not something that like comes up. It's just non-existent, unfortunately.
So, as your mom, what was the most difficult challenge facing growing up, knowing your mom was addicted to drugs?
The lack of accountability.
Okay.
Like to this day, it's the lack of accountability, because I remember one time I was in this organization, and we were going to Orlando, and like I said, I had worked, and I had my mentor had took me to go get my own bank account,
Mhm.
and I had to have like an adult, so she didn't feel comfortable because I had my mom, so we put my
Right.
mom on it. Biggest mistake. She made my account negative. She
Wow.
checks. Like I didn't have any money to go to Orlando anymore. And it was
Wow.
just like the lack of accountability for actions that I had to suffer the consequences for. And not even like individually within a family dynamic. It just
Mhm.
like, to me at the time, it's like you're a whole nurse. You can make good money, but you put yourself into positions to where we got get kicked out, or we don't have a place to live,
Yeah.
or you lose your job, or you lose
Mhm.
your car. Now you can't get back to work. So it was just like the lack of accountability of her actions and recognizing that the things that we did was stuff that like she introduced us to, like stealing.
Okay.
My mom taught us how to steal.
Wow.
And so like we would go to the mall and steal. And when like we got caught, it was kind of like surprising to her. But I'm like, listen, you
You
taught me
told us.
this.
Yeah, you like taught me
So
this.
so it was just like, and my mom would do it so often, like she made it look easy. So I
Mhm.
thought it was easy. And so
Right.
like and stuff of that sense of like I just felt like despite, I feel like she really tried hard to separate her addiction from her family and her responsibilities.
Mhm.
And I would say that, she did all that she could, but I feel like she could have done more. And even
Mhm.
after, like when my niece got taken away, there was no accountability. It was
Right.
just like, this person shouldn't have done that, and this person shouldn't
Yeah.
have done that. But it all stems down to your addiction, and it's not
Yeah.
something that came out of the blue. So I would say that would be because a lot of stuff that I went through, I didn't have to go through if
Yeah.
it wasn't for your actions.
Did you ever like have a sit down with your mom and like to tell her how you felt about her being, you know, being a drug addict, or just even explain to her like, mom,
Right.
I'm bouncing from one place to another. I love you. Like, we're your kids, It- you know, I don't want to be in foster care. I don't want to be in the group home. I want to be with my mother.
No, because the way she presented things, it was her sickness of cancer, and it was really
Mm,
their sickness of addiction. And
Mhm.
so when we were in foster care, and it wasn't because I'm on drugs. It
Mhm.
wasn't, you're not in a group home because I'm on drugs. It's of, I need to put you guys here because I need to get back on my feet.
mm,
And so it was, no, once I got older, and I had people that encouraged to have that conversation of how I truly felt about my mother.
Mhm.
As I got older, it was just like I just gotta love you from a distance, because
yeah.
I felt like, it wasn't something that I felt like needed to happen. And like because I was so independent. Like at the age of
Right.
16, it was just like I don't you calling me more than I'm calling you for stuff when I should be calling you. But
You. Mhm.
Yeah.
me, so it was like it was just separate, separate, separate. It wasn't like I want to fix this relationship or why are you doing this to us? Because like I said, until I got old enough to like be able to fend for
Understand.
myself,
Yeah.
like, this is just life. This is what normal is. Like your mom loves you type of thing, and she do what she can. But it wasn't like as broad as it is now,
Yeah.
realizing the things that I went through.
Hmm.
Mhm. So with you, how old were you when you started living on your own?
I would say 16. So kind of sort of. So 16 is when I went with my mentor, and I was staying with my mentor for about like a year until I graduated.
Okay.
And when I graduated high school, that's when I had a school counselor at my high school who they had like an open house. They were getting ready to sell. So she said I could stay there for the summer. So I stayed there for the summer until I left to go to college. And so I when I was 16, I signed myself back into foster care, when I turned 18, I signed myself back into foster care so I could still get the benefits.
Okay.
And so I was in independent living at the age of 16. And so, during the summer I worked 2 jobs. I was working at JCPenney and Equifax. I was always working. Oh, that's one thing about me. Anybody say I always was working.
Grinding. You be grinding.
Yeah. And so I would say 16 is when like the full transition of like, all right, I don't have my mom no more. I don't have the guidance. It's like, do what you got to do type of thing. But the thing is, like, it came natural. Like, it wasn't really something that I had to get in the mindset type of thing. It was just kind of like, you got to earn, you got to get money. If you want a car, work, and you got to save, you need food. I definitely used the system. Used the system and all their benefits. But going to college, like, my grandparents helped me move. But when I decided to go, because I could have stayed in Iowa and got a full ride and didn't have to pay for school. But I didn't want to. I wanted to get as far away as possible. So when I came to New Orleans, I had no plan. I didn't know how I was going to pay for college. I didn't know how I was going to do anything. It was just like, you figure it out when you get there type of thing. So my grandparents helped me drive down here, but it wasn't like it wasn't scary because I guess I'm so used to like moving around and adapting, so it wasn't scary, but it was just like, wow, like he just moved
adapting.
hours away from everybody.
And at this point you're just by yourself, you know,
Yeah,
you have your siblings.
Yeah.
So I think it was like you said, you adapted, you know, I think that's what happens when you're constantly shifting from one place to another. You quickly adapt. It's just the only difference is you were alone. So that probably gave you a little hesitation a little bit there.
Exactly.
She was used to bouncing back and, bouncing from place to place. So
yeah,
in the sense of her going on her own this time, it kind of more was, what happens if it doesn't work out?
Yeah.
That hesitation. Yeah.
Fine. Like, what if it doesn't work out? It was just like, it has to work because there's no other option.
Yeah.
I remember like my first year in college and thinking I had like a big balance, and once, because of like everything in life, when something happens, I just assume the worst. It just always assume the worst. So when it had a big balance, it was just like, oh, I gotta move back, and I can't go to school. I gotta go to this school, and it just was like a roller coaster. But I went through Xavier with not having to pay out of pocket. Every time I needed money, I got it. Whether it was a scholarship or I went to the financial aid office and I said, hey, look, I need some money, and they got it. I never had any problems with the financial aid office. I never had any problem getting money. Anytime like I had issues with a car, I got a car within the same week. So I would say that like my college journey was truly blessed in the sense of I made a way. Like once I found out how to get money, doing like research and being part of these programs, and then paying me and then paying my tuition, being an RA, like I found ways to make money.
Nice.
That's good. Where did you get your motivation from to continuing to pursue for school and graduate and not let your childhood and your past define who you are? Because a lot of people sometimes they use it as a victim instead of prospering in life. So where do you get was it your mentor? Was she a lot of your motivation, or?
I would say a lot of people said I was just self-determined. It was just, college was never something that was spoke about in my household. And it was, I was definitely surrounded by the right people that supported and encouraged me to do whatever I wanted to do. But I would say the motivation was I saw everything what I didn't want, and I had to figure out a way to make sure that didn't happen.
Yes.
And so at the time, school was the only thing. Like everyone got to go to school. You got to go to school. Got to go to school. So, that's what it was. So giving up was never an option, and not you know, when I wrote my essays for everything, it was like I say that people, you know, would use the things that they've been through as a way to hinder what they're going through. But it was my motivation. Like,
Right.
I've been through all of this. College ain't nothing. Like, I could do college. So that was my thing. It was just, this is what it was. And I saw it and I made it happen.
That's amazing. That's amazing.
amazing.
You didn't let nothing stop you. You're like, I'm unstoppable.
No. And it's crazy because, like, at graduation, I cried the whole time because it was like, wow. Like, it was my first time like failing in like grades because Xavier, first of all, was hard, but college was hard, and like getting my first F and like, you know, dealing with depression. And then also on top of like some semesters I worked 3 jobs and you know, trying to figure out everything on my own. And it was just like, whenever I made it, and not only did I made it, I had like a good GPA, and I did dual programs and I did research. Like, I was reflecting on everything that I did in those 4 years, and I'm like, wow, like
Rewarding.
yes, I just cried. Like, you gonna stop crying? I said, no.
Hard work is worth it. Hard work
definitely paid off.
It sure did.
So you said you were working 3 jobs, going to school to get your degree. What struggles did you face during all this, trying to balance everything and, you know, being what, 18?
Struggles. It was, I would just say just the stress of like, because like I said, if something bad happened, like my mom would just go to the worst. So like finding that balance of like, if God got you this far, Lauren, he gonna continue to be there. And so wherever I go, I always find a strong support system. So I found a strong support system at Xavier. I found a strong support system outside of school. And I just really use that because the way I would say cope is talk. So like I'm very open about what I do. So if I talk about it with somebody, then you know I could get back on track. And if I cry, once I cry, I'm good. And so I would say that was the struggle was just like the stress. And sometimes like reflecting back too, you know, I would wish I got those phone calls of, hey, how's class? And you know, like, you know, to this day, I don't know if my mom knows what my major is. I don't know if she, you know, really knows what my future goals are. But I do wish that I had like that support system, like, hey, how's class doing? Or like, you got a test coming up, or like, how's your research? Like, I had some of my friends, they mama called them every morning, and like they wished them a good week. So like I did here and there reminisce about that missing family component, because I did want to share like my college journey. And there's a lot of stuff, a lot of trauma that I experienced during my college, during sexual assaults, that like a lot of people didn't know about in my family. So like it was a lot of stuff that never got shared, and no one ever came to visit. And you know, it was just get it done.
Did any of your family support you at graduation? Chandra is asking from the audience.
Yes. So my mom and my dad and a lot of my family from Chicago did come.
Okay.
For my graduation, and it was bittersweet because I appreciate their support, but it was like, why celebrate at the end? Why weren't y'all there during the journey? And so, you know, I definitely appreciate them for coming. And I appreciate everyone that came for my graduation, but it just was like, you know, I needed y'all for 4 years, not this time. So.
Yeah, they weren't there for you through your words, but were there when were there when you were succeeding.
That's typically how it goes, though. You know.
Yeah, it does.
You know, and like my not so much immediate family. You know, I have my Nana and Poppy. I appreciate them. And like, you know, the relationship within like my family in Chicago wasn't very strong, is because of my mom. Like she wanted to hide her addiction, so she hid us from our family. And so like I could have had stronger relationships with people, but it was never there because we were always so distant. And so like I know that like if anything dire needed to happen and I needed to call someone, I did have people I could call on. But it wasn't like, it didn't feel normal. It didn't feel like they were always there.
Right.
And so it wasn't, the support could have been stronger, but the
Yeah.
relationship with my family wasn't very strong because of the distant type of thing. It was just like, oh, I'm here for the
Mm.
summer type of thing, and you my cousin, you my auntie, or something like that.
Right.
But it wasn't like, hey, auntie, what you doing type of thing. Like,
Yeah.
relationships weren't as strong as I felt like they should have been.
That
Mm.
makes sense.
Yeah. You spoke about your niece. So how did you have the courage to pursue custody of your niece?
Great question. Because the niece, like I said, I have a good, well, I used to have a good relationship with her sister. That's the
Mhm.
first one. And with her, before I got her, we didn't have a relationship. She didn't know me. I didn't know her. I knew of her. But the person that she was with had reached out and was like, do you know anybody that could take her? And I was just like, no, but I can. And it wasn't like a let me think about it type of thing.
Mhm.
It was just like I'll take her, because to me, in my time, it was like going. The system isn't an option, and
Right.
so at the time, it's been about a year and a half since I've had her. At
Okay.
the time, it wasn't like I need to sit down and think about this. You're
Mhm.
young, you have responsibilities. Can you financially support her? Like, what is this going to look like? It was just like, figure it out.
Look
Like, I
away.
else in my life. Get her and figure it out. And so the courage was already there. It wasn't nothing that needed to be like, okay, you got to get ready for it. It was the only thing that I was more concerned of, like, is she gonna like me? Is
Oh.
in New Orleans? It wasn't like, because like I said, we didn't have a relationship.
Relationship.
And so that was the only probably the scary thing was. And that's and I had my nephew for a month. I had to take him for a month, and like I said, I just figured it out. With going to school, taking him to daycare, doing schoolwork, like it was just that
Yeah.
type of thing.
Wow.
And even if it came to this day where I had to take all my nieces and nephews, that
You
would be
would.
a lot. I would probably figure it out. And so it's definitely been a journey.
Mhm.
It's definitely been a journey, taking her in, building a relationship, and then also, she's been through her own trauma,
Right.
and she's been exposed to a lot of things, and so, you know, trying to mold her and protect her in a way that allows her to explore life in a way that I wish I could have as a
Yeah.
child. But also, it's hard to teach a child and protect them from somebody that they seek most, the love that they seek most.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And so trying to protect her from certain family members and individuals is definitely a challenge, on top of like not me being the bad guy.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
And so it's definitely been a journey. I pray a lot. I pray a lot. And I just continue to do what needs to be done.
Mhm. I'm sure she'll appreciate in the long run that you did have the courage to take her in and just be that guidance of positivity and
Yeah.
what a healthy relationship looks like, versus the traumatic experience that you've gone through, that you can use that as an example. And then also, I'm sure she has her own memories as well, and then missing her mother and
Yeah.
maybe not able to grasp everything as a whole. How old is your niece?
She's 11.
She's 11. Okay. And she's about to hit that teenage stage.
Yeah.
That
But I'm glad that she does have you in her corner, because you're definitely a role model. You're working, you're modeling, you went to school, you able to get 2 degrees. So she does have that positive perspective in her life that some people aren't able to see, if they're getting they get put in the system.
Exactly.
Yeah. Totally agree. So Lauren, with everything that you've gone through, with the group home, the foster system, and just everything with all your trials and tribulations, where does your inspiration come from?
That's a good question, and I always love that question. But my answer is always, you know, I I feel like something was just instilled in me, and to be able to show other people, especially kids. Like, I love working with kids. Everything I do is working with kids of all ages. Um, that if I can do it, you can too. Because you know, it was just whatever I just have a passion for showing them that, like, the system doesn't have to define your life forever. What's happened to
Okay.
you doesn't have to. I always just say, what happened to me doesn't define who I am, because I used to be like, I've never been embarrassed to say my mother is a crack addict. I've never been embarrassed to say that I've lived in shelters and that I lived in motels. I've never been embarrassed to say that I was molested, because, it doesn't define who I am. It's just something that I experience. It's not
Yes.
who I am as a person. And so I try to show the youth that I work with in any aspect that, regardless of what happens to you, that doesn't define who you are, and it doesn't have to be the outcome of your life. I had he was 6 at the time, and he was struggling with behavioral problems, and I would ask him, like, why do you feel like you have to be bad? And he would say, well, everything else around me is bad, so that's what happened. Like, that stuck with me, that, like, and I would just encourage him, like, although your parents are fighting and this is going on, that doesn't mean that you have to be bad yourself, or that you have to have bad energy.
Yeah.
And so that's what inspires me, the showing that the youth they just need that extra love and support. And the feedback that I get with working from youth, that's what keeps me going. Showing that, like, I make a difference, and even though I can't change the outcomes of their life, I can show them that it's possible. And so that the youth inspire me. Not unfortunately, what they go through is what keeps me going the path that I'm going through. But, like, hear the words of, like, Miss Lauren, like, you really make a difference, or Miss Lauren, I really appreciate you just listening. That's what inspires me.
That's great. That's great how you're helping the community, and, helping their stories become greater than who they are, because they need you. And sometimes it's harder for the youth to talk to their parents or talk to people that they don't trust. So it's good that they're able to confide in you and be able to trust you with what they're going through.
Agree.
If there's one thing that you could tell others that's been in and out of the system, what would it be?
A few things.
Okay.
One of the mottos is giving up is never an option. That just keep going. I know that it may feel like things are always going to be rainy and it's never going to be sunshine, but there's always going to be sunshine. 2, use the system. Use the system. When I say that there's resources out there is money for you. You just have to advocate and ask for it. Like, I got my car off of the strength of the system. I got stipends off of the strength of the system. I'm lucky that I had a good lawyer that gave me the ropes and told me to sign myself back in to be able to use the system. And so for those that are in the system, use it. And 3, let's see, I have this quote. Never let your obstacles become more important than your goal. Regardless of what is going on right now, there's always an end goal, and just keep that in mind, and that the way that you're going to get there is always going to change. And it will always, life is a roller coaster, so something is always going to happen. but you can't control what other people do. You can't control what your parents do and the consequences that you may have to suffer because of their actions. You can't control, the community violence. You can't control a lot of things in your life, but what you can control is how you respond and how you deal with them. And so just pay attention to the things that you put into this world, because what you put in is what you're going to get out. And so just to continue to have hope, find a strong support system, find a way that when you go low, how can you get back high? Because that's essential. Because of the life that the cards that you were dealt, there are going to be a lot of lows, but it's all about how you play the cards. Just because you were dealt a bad hand doesn't mean you can't still win the game.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Lauren, for your story. It's amazing how you did not allow your life struggles to dictate where you are now. And then not only that, being a caregiver for your niece, and then not only that, just being an inspiration to the community. And I applaud you for that. So we have a question that we ask all our guest speakers. What makes you uncommon?
Because I would say what makes me uncommon is my self-perseverance. Like looking back and just reflecting, and the more I tell my story, like I always found a way. I was very resourceful. And so I truly admire that about myself, is my ability to not give up, no matter how hard I feel, or no matter how much I may want to in that moment, or how low I may be at that time. I always kept going. And so I feel like that's very important to have, is to be resourceful, and to never give up, and always do it with a smile on your face. Like I said, I've never been ashamed to tell my story or to share where I came from.
I like that.
So do I. Thank you so much.
Too, we're gonna see her on Vogue, right?
Yeah.
I'm trying to get there. Keep playing with it. It's okay. I'm gonna get there. I'm very consistent.
Yes, persistent. Let me see if there's any questions that we had from the audience before we close up. Just some comments. Broken. Speaking in the foster care system, which is unfortunate. Definitely unfortunate. And we answered pretty much everything else. All right, Jenny, we're good to go.
Thank you again, Lauren, and thank you for our followers for tuning in this evening. Make sure you go out and check out our apparel at www.uncommonwomen.net, as well as make sure you go onto our YouTube channel, Uncommon Women Podcast. Make sure you like and you subscribe. And also, I am currently still looking for guest speakers for our awareness for the month of July. Sorry about that. Let me correct myself. For the month of July, I am looking for someone for cleft and cryofacial and sarcoma awareness. So if you or anyone is advocating or has a testimony or is experiencing any of those awarenesses, you can contact me or email me at uncommon3women@gmail.com. And then as well, make sure you tune in next week. We also have another testimony, an amazing woman to come on at 8 p.m. Eastern time. And everyone, stay uncommon. Bye.